This is a follow-on video from the rigging Blaze video. The original video ended up running quite long and jumped over a couple of topics throughout the rigging. In this video, we're going to try to catch up and explain those topics. Let's start from the top. Offset parent matrix. This demo character is using the option in Advanced Skeleton under the Preparation Rigs section that's called Offset Parent Matrix. And as it says here, it's a function that came to be in Maya 2020, and it allows for a slightly different way of setting up transformation nodes. You can drive them directly with matrix values instead of the standard transform values. And what this does, it allows for a faster performing rig. If you want to know more, you can open the help image, which has a link on the bottom here that opens the YouTube video showing even more details. So this Blaze rig is using offset parent matrix, and as been noted here, Blaze requires Maya 2024. Okay, the next item, control curve colors. Yes, that's another thing that was skipped in the video. We could see in the video that we ended up with this control curve colors that are not matching the default colors that you get when you build an advanced color rig. The default color scheme is blue FK controllers, red IK controllers. Whereas here we can see the color scheme is green on the right and red on the left, and no color differentiation between FK and IK. So to change from the default colors to these colors is fairly straightforward using the functions in the control curves section. What we can do to demonstrate how this is done, we can do the same for one of the other demo characters. Let's go ahead and grab Tuna. We see he's got the default colors, red for IK, blue for FK. If we wanted to swap over, we would simply just say what colors we want. So let's go with the right for the red color. Then we will select FK controllers on the right side and hit set color. Now you see all the right colors FK have been red, and FK left going to be green. Just hiding the face controllers now to make it clear. Actually, let's make the center ones yellow, just like Blaze. And there you can see that's how we have now swapped him to be a different color scheme. Character's right hand side is red and left is green. Now another thing we can do here that was also done on Blaze was increase the size for some of the controllers. So let's say we wanted to make the wider controller for some of the main ones like the wrist, elbows and shoulder. We can set these to use a wider curve. Alright, let's jump back to Blaze and move on the list. Remove BuildPose. Let's show how that's done. During the rigging process, you might want to have some custom poses. For example, the legs can be quite useful to have in FK during the rigging. But if you were to change them over to FK, you're doing some rigging and you hit go to BuildPose, they're going to default back to IK. So what you can do is you can always right click on the go to BuildPose and say set build pose. That detects what are not in default pose and allows you to store that. So I say okay. Now anytime I were to modify anything, hit go to BuildPose, it will return to FK on the legs. However, when I'm getting close to done with rigging and ready to publish the rig, I do want it to be back to the default behavior. And this is where we want to remove the custom set build pose. And the way that's done, we can just open the outliner, find the node called fit skeleton, open the attribute editor under extra attributes. There's an attribute called run. Just select this text, remove it, hit enter. And the custom build post is removed. So if we now hit go to build post, the legs should, like before, switch to the default IK. And that seems to be working. Next, IK local. Yes, this guy is using the local IK options. So for example, change these arms over to IK, select IK controller. You can see that the directions, the axes are aligned, is matching the wrist in the model's pose. By default, all IKs are world-oriented, which have a lot of benefits and makes most sense, especially if your character is modeled close to T-pose. Then it's very beneficial for animators to have exact world-oriented IK controllers, so they can do things like moving the leg straight forwards or straight upwards are going to correspond to only one translation axis. But you can, of course, override this, and that has been done here for Blaze. And the way it was done, it's in the fit skeleton. We toggle over to the fit skeleton, and if you select the wrist, you see that it has an attribute here called IK local. And that was added by selecting the wrist, and in the attribute drop-down menu, it was chosen the IK local, which has added this attribute. Okay, next on the list, T-pose. Yes, so in the selector, pose reset goes back to the build pose. There is another one here called pose T-pose. Let's go to T-pose. So you can see our character is now actually in T-pose, even though that's not the default for the model or the rig. And the way this is achieved is by using the extra controllers. So you can see the IK feet here. Even though the controller is not in the build pose, it is zero out the values. And that's because if we hit the up key on the keyboard, you get to that extra controller. And that has now applied the values for this character to get into this pose. So we have build pose and we have T-pose. All right, next item, custom TwistAmounts. Yes, we have used some custom TwistAmounts on this character here. And let's have a look at one of the limbs that have twisting. If you twist the wrist, that distribution gets distributed throughout the joints in the forearm. Turn on the joint visibility. So each one of these gets part of the twist. And each of these joints also can be customized to how much twist it should receive. For example, you wanted all the twist to happen on the wrist. You could just set that twist amount to 0. And now you see all the twisting is happening on the wrist itself. Now that wouldn't be very pretty, so you might need some other twist amount. And what we want to show here is that yes, you can customize the amount that you want to have each segment twisting. And the thing to keep in mind, if you do customize these values, is that you also want to get the other side and make sure you customize these values as well. And one more thing to keep in mind, if you were to use a non-default value for the twist amount for one of these, and you were to run rebuild advanced skeleton, these values would actually reset to their default values. And the way to avoid that is you simply make sure there's an incoming connection on this value, which you can do by just setting a key. So that's how we can custom twist amounts. Next, SkinCage reuse. Yes, that is a function. Under body deform option 2, there's the function here that we looked at a few times before, which is creating a skin cage that can be used to help with skin weighting. So let's go ahead and create one. So there's our skin cage. Now in the advanced section here, we have the reuse option. Now this can be useful in a few different situations. So you might have, for example, spent some time tweaking the skin cage to get it exactly how you want, and you want to apply that to another character. You might want to use reuse. Or another case could be that you need to rebuild advanced skeleton, which will reset the skin cage. In the other case, if you want to reuse the tweaked skin cage, there's some buttons here for that. And essentially it says start by opening the script editor, clear the history, choose what you want to keep, X forms or shapes. So X form is moved, rotated, scaled, each one of these curves. Shapes gonna be how much you have potentially moved each one of the control vertices of the skin curves. Catch is essentially just saying even if your new cage do not have some of the same curve names, do not fail on error, just proceed with any error, so it's catching. Print commands, you see that essentially prints out a long list of commands in here. You can copy that and paste that into the input. So this would now become the command to set this exact skin cage. All right, next, shoulder aim. That's another thing that our character has that is not in the default biped configuration. And what it is, it's that here we can see even if our arm is an FK arm, if you grab that scapula control and you rotate it, orientation of the arm remains the same. Unlike the default behavior is if the scapula rotates, the shoulder inherits that rotation. So the way it's been set up is a function that's been added to the fit skeleton. So look at that, just go to toggle to the fit skeleton. And we can see there's an option that can be added called follow. And there's an attribute already here on the shoulder called follow. So it's set to follow chest already. But to show how that was done, we will actually remove it first. So to set the behavior that the shoulder rotation do not get affected by the scapula is the same as saying that we want the shoulder to follow the orientation of the chest, which is the same. So to get that, we're gonna want to add follow, and if you just select the shoulder and hit add, you'll see an error, and the error tells you need to select both the one that follows and what to follow. So the order is going to be you select your target and the chest, and then you select where to add the function. There's shoulder, and then we add follow, and we get an attribute here on the shoulder called follow with the value that says what to follow. It's going to follow the chest. All right, next. The hair includes controls from the edgeLoop. We can see that in the actual final demo rig that's available for download, there are these controllers for the hair. And essentially the way it's been done is these were added after the face setup, but they have been added as body controllers. And that's just because the body section is much more flexible when it comes to adding custom controllers. So even after the face setup was completed, the way it was done, toggle fit advanced, you can see that joints have been added in here. Then we have run the rebuild advanced skeleton, which has given us these additional controllers. What we're gonna also mention here is that the hair controllers have controllers that are actual from the edgeLoop. So that's a neat little function here. We can see that each controller here is quite neatly exactly matching the edgeLoop that is right near where the controller's joint is coming from. And the reason for that is that it actually has been generated from those edgeLoops. And the way to do that is in the control curves section, there is the swap curve function, which basically allows you to swap with any curve like this. You can import the gallery, have a large variety of options, and pick one of these guys, swap curve. You see the swap curve allows us to quickly get any controller shape in there. Now the swap curve also has a neat little function where it can take an edge loop and turn it into a curve. So, and that's what's been done for the hair, which is why each controller exactly matches the model. Let's do it for the wrist to demonstrate how it's done. We just choose the edge loop by double clicking. Then you shift click to also select the controller and you hit swap curve. And you can see we now have a controller generated from that edge loop. And we can do that again on the fingers here just to show how it's done. Select the edge loop, select the controller, and hit swap curve. So just a neat little function that will kind of optimize control curves to exactly match the geometry. All right, next point, render error. Yes, and basically it's a Arnold issue where if you just open the character and you try to render, you are likely to get an error, and it says something like Maya to Arnold null, and it does not render. If you do get this, reopen the scene. The trick is going to be you need to hit the render setting first. So now open the render setting. Now it's all fixed. Now I should be able to render and just chuck in sky dome, hit render. Now rendering works. And that's the end of the list. I hope you have enjoyed this follow-on video for rigging of Blaze, and I'll see you next time.